Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Bruce Cordell, the senior game designer over at Monte Cook Games, and he has been around the industry for a very long time. My first exposure that I'm cognizant of would probably be third edition, but looking back at your works, you've been around since AD&D second edition, so you've been quite prolific.
Thanks for having me on, Dave. And yeah, you're right. I've been working since '95, which was second edition. Uh, basically dove right in, started writing adventures and supplements in second edition, and on into third, fourth, and even beginning of fifth. So yeah, it's been a great.
So 95, I was 20, and that was probably just a couple years before the first iteration of Nerdarchy, or our gaming group, I should say, actually started. So that is quite a blast from the past.
That's right. Yeah, I was actually working at the university. I working for 3 years in a biotech startup after I'd gotten a degree in biology and biotech. And during that period of time, I'd also found the beginning of the computer internet craze that started. And if you remember MUDs and mushes back then, multi-user, shared hallucinations, multi-user dungeons, people would connect on the internet using these text-based multi-user D&D games. So the computers we were using to run these RNA, DNA synthesizers, you only needed a little bit of computing power to set up those sequences, and the rest of the time it was just connected to the incipient internet. And so I taught myself how to code these muds and mushes, and I kind of was a really big into the Elendor, which is a Lord of the Rings based multi-user shared hallucination with all the text and stuff. And basically it's like Zork with other people you meet being actual entities online. And using they actually hired me at TSR in '95 to do a D&D version of a mud or mush. But when I got there 2 weeks later, I said, okay, goodbye biotech job. I'm going to do this now. It's going to be great. And they said, no, I don't know. It never got off the ground. They had me start working on a text-based game, a regular published pen and paper game called Gates of Firestorm Peak. But that worked out. But
From there, it's all history. I don't think I actually came online personally for like a couple years after that. It took me a little while, and even then, my earliest memories are maybe like trolling forums a little bit, and StarCraft. I think StarCraft was the thing that really brought me online.
that was a fun game. I love StarCraft. Yeah, I think the only reason I guess I was lucky because the biotech startup I worked for was a kind of a startup based on the university I had been going to in Boulder, and so all the universities were connected to the incipient internet. So when the biotech company itself started, Nexstar, which was, it doesn't matter what the name is, we all the employees had email, right? And you could only really email other people in the company or other university people, but it was still pretty awesome and play these muds and mushes.
Wow. Now, just imagine like thinking back to the early days when you're using internet compared to now. Just the wait times to get on and get things going.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Every so often, though, I still get on telnet and connect up to the old Elendor mud text-based multi-user game, and just tool around a little bit. It's fun. It's blast from the past. Yeah, how long ago is it? Over 20 years. Oh, wow.
That's funny. And the interesting thing I'm finding as I talk to more people is like all these like tech-based and science-based degrees, and people come and work in this industry. Like I know, like even Darcy, yeah, works with you guys. She's got like a very specific degree and area of study. Um, and then
Yes.
I believe Wolfgang from Cobalt Press was in like biotech as well or something.
Yeah, Darcy is pursuing her degree in a PhD in studying. I'm sure it has a very specific name, but snails is kind of a general way of saying what her topic of interest is. And Sean Reynolds, who also works with us, he's our managing editor and part-time designer. He also has a degree in chemistry. Wolfgang degree, I think, in chemistry, biochemistry, perhaps. Yeah, that's true. It's I don't know what that says, but lots of other people in our company have degrees in English and history and other things that are not science. So it runs the gamut.
Maybe it says there's some things you just can't make with science, so you just need to do RPGs.
Well, might be onto something there, because like I said, I was working for 3 years at that biotech company, and we're trying to create a RNA-based, medication essentially. And these experiments, they would fail 99% of the time, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to try this, fail. I'm going to try this, fail. And after 2 years, it's like, I'm going to make up this thing, and it is what it is, right? So that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, now like you can just crit it with a nat 20 or 00, depending on the game you're playing, and
Sure.
Boom, success.
Right. I've written it. It is now there. The end.
Yeah. Hey guys, remember, if you have questions for Bruce, feel free to ask them in the chat. Just put question before it. It makes it a lot easier for me to pick them out. And they've been chatting for a while, so the chat has already been going. They're they can be pretty prolific, whether they're talking at us or to themselves.
Gotcha.
Which is a lot of fun. We usually end up with people from all over the world. So what are you guys working on at Monte Cook Games nowadays? What's the new thing?
Well, we're right now, our two biggest thrusts right now are Invisible Sun, which is actually, I think, all at the printer at this point. But so as far as we've been working really hard on it. Although there are secondary books and stuff, but the Black Cube, I don't know how familiar you are with Invisible Sun, but
we got the main thrust coming.
What's that?
We've got 3 of them coming. So.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Okay. So yeah, everything that's part of that Black Cube is basically in production right now. So we made that handover, and that means that we kind of can step back and now focus on Newman Era 2. I've actually been working on Newman Era 2 for several months, but now as other people in the company have been able to step back from Invisible Sun, which is basically all the rest of the design team, Monte, Shauna, and Sean, we can all focus on Newman Era 2, which has quite a big selection of books, but of course we're focusing first on the first 2 core books. The original core book is getting quite a big update, but we have a secondary companion core book, which expands the game, and it's just as large, 416 pages, as the first core book. So there's a lot of material to create, a lot of material to play test, but it's all going well. Just keeping me busy, keeping all of us busy.
So, do you have a favorite either Strange or Newman Era moment, or maybe even Invisible Sun? At this point, I'm sure you had to do a bunch of play testing there as well.
Well, I guess there's lots of favorite moments. I don't know. I guess one of my favorite moments when it came to the Strange was actually why one of the reasons I left Wizards of the Coast is I wanted to write another novel. And the novel situation, the novel department there had kind of been wound down through various reasons. And I had written 10 previous novels at Wizards of the Coast, mostly in the Forgotten Realms. And so I'd kind of had it in my blood. I want to keep writing novels. I really enjoy this. And so I left Wizards to write a science fiction novel. And I was going to write about why Fermi's paradox is, in the universe as large as ours seems to be, why we detect no signs of any other intelligent alien life, right? That's Fermi's paradox. And so I'm going to write a science fiction novel that addresses this. And that was kind of my initial conception for The Strange. And I was telling my friend Monte about my novel idea, and he was like, oh yeah. Hey, why don't we write a game based on that? I was like, well, that is one way to take this forward. And, so I was happy to accept, that initial response of hey, let's write a game based on that. you and I together. I'm like, all right, that is what we'll do. And so that's how I actually ended up joining MCG, and Monty and I wrote The Strange together. And the novel that I had been writing took a backseat for like 4 years and only came out this year, finally, through Angry Robot. So, yay, finally got the novel out as well.
Is by chance, is that on Audible?
I'll have to check it. They are working on it. I know they are working on it as of a month ago, creating an Audible thing, and I haven't actually checked to see if it's up yet. But yes, if it's not there now, it will soon be. So set a reminder, everyone, if you're an Audible listener, which I am as well, often, check for Myth of the Maker soon.
I'm going to put it on my list. I used to be a prolific reader, and one of my great laments is in my more recent years, I don't read very much, but I have been trying to listen to more audiobooks to try and like fill that gap somehow.
I totally know what you mean. I was also a very prolific reader, and I'm a listener now, a reader sometimes. I just got a book by Curtis Chen. Anyone familiar with him? He's got 2 novels out, and I actually have the physical book, and I'm really enjoying it. I guess the font's big enough that I can see it. I don't know. It's an actual physical book. It's not even an ebook or an Audible book. So there's still hope for us.
They're asking if you wrote the novel too, but I guess that question has been answered. So our chief and nerd editor, Doug, works on the website for us, has got a question for you. Was it cool to see the Gaius Tree lure from Sunless Citadel make an appearance in Curse of Strahd?
Anytime, yes. Short answer, yes. I mean, and I guess the longer answer is anytime something you write, in some previous adventure, something kind of makes an outbreak, a breakout into the greater D&D lore, that's very cool. It's most people don't necessarily, they just see it as a continuous stream of D&D lore. But if you happen to be someone who wrote that, you're like, oh, yay. Like we were talking earlier offline about the Far Realm, right? I mean, it was awesome to see that kind of propagate so thoroughly through the D&D-verse over something that I just wrote in an adventure as a one-off adventure so long ago.
One of the things I feel a little guilty about now that I've started doing these live chats, and we're at like 161 or something. So at this point we've had a lot of different guests on. Is when I would start to research a guest, I'm like, oh man, like I've touched so many products that you've worked on, and I never even knew it. So the fun part for me now is kind of like rediscovering what everyone actually has done in their contributions to the hobby, or even people that I'm familiar with. And then you start, peeling back the layers, and you realize how much more they've done than you even knew. So, actually I want to thank you and everyone who's makes this hobby so awesome. Well,
thank you for, enjoying the stuff that we write, and keeping us employed in a great profession. So it's a virtuous circle, I guess. So
yeah, well, it's kind of symbiotic at this point, because I kind of do this full time, make videos and talk to cool people like yourself about gaming. I would have never thought when we got started with this that, or started as a gamer, that not only are people now playing these games on a scale that they are, but it's actually being enjoyed and absorbed as entertainment as well.
That is pretty crazy. I mean, just watching how people of all ages, not just kids, but adults, and watching like Critical Role obviously being the best example, but there's so many other things out there that people are just drawn to on Twitch, right? So it's pretty amazing, and like it's something that like you said, we've experimented with a few times ourselves, and probably likely to continue to experiment, because we like playing games, and hey, if we can play games in a way that's entertaining, maybe we can get an audience as well. Who knows, right? That's the future.
So it's cool to hear the Blackboxes off to be made now, because like I said, we actually have 3 of them coming with the plan of having 1 to play for ourselves and 2 to give away to the fans.
Are you going to play like a online sort of ongoing game thing, or just playing yourselves amongst yourselves, not for online access?
So we have like 2 different ways that we do that. One is we have our in-person groups, and we still record them, It's horrible production, but we throw up a camera, we do our thing, and play the game, or we do like Google Hangouts, and we'll do games that way. But we have not actually we haven't decided yet. It's way too far off to even contemplate. Right now I'm involved with a Star Wars game, and that's an in-person game that we record. A couple D&D games that are in-person games that we record, and then online we have a 5e collab game we do. Then I run a weekly game for D&D online, and we're also currently playing Marvel Phase Rip in a weekly game as well.
All right, so you're booked up at the moment.
Yeah, but who knows what the future holds?
Do you do you prefer playing in person over online sort of interactions? Is there, or is it just what's your preference on that? Just out of curiosity.
You know what? I would have never thought that I would enjoy playing online as much as I do. I feel like so they're different experiences, and I enjoy them both. So when I play in person, that's getting together with your buddies, and you're hanging out, and you're playing the game, and you're having dinner, and it's going to be 4, 5, 6 hours, however long you're going to play for. When I get online, I generally play in games that are 2 to 3 hours. They're really condensed. I feel like everyone is super focused on the game, and there's not a lot of outside chatter going on, and you get more gaming done.
Oh, interesting.
But it's all about the game, and it kind of loses a little bit of the social aspect.
Right. No, I totally get that.
So I like them both. I think they both have a lot of great merit to them. And it's so much easier. How many times do I hear people go, "Oh, I can't find a group"? Well, now you can reach out all over the world and find a group.
That's true. I mean, they have various different platforms even that dedicated solely to that, like Roll20 being the one that comes to the top of my head.
Yeah, Roll20, yeah, Fantasy Grounds. There's a bunch of smaller ones that have popped up. Even our own games, we really just use Google Hangouts and
right. If you have some people already in contact with, right, Google Hangouts, or we use Zoom. It's something you have to pay for Zoom a little bit every month. Well, you don't. We do pay, but if you can use it for up to an hour at a time, and then you have to restart the meeting if you didn't start the meeting from the paying account, which is interesting.
Yeah, we actually had picked up Zoom as well, and had the paid account. I actually had picked it up to interview Monty the last time.
Oh.
And we just kept it. And my one weekly game, we don't do anything special with it, but we just use that. And with the paid version, you can actually stream it right to YouTube or Facebook or wherever you want to send it. And we like the fact that, you have the Brady Bunch boxes instead of the switching back and forth, and two people can kind of talk at the same time.
That is nice. I guess I don't know how this is coming off to the audience, but I imagine it's switching between my face and your face back and forth.
Yeah, it's exactly what it does. As it hears the sound, it switches from one person to the other. So Kyle Ellis has a question. It might be a little bit of an odd one, but what would you say your contribution was the most helpful or most harmful to D&D as a whole? Did you break?
I would say it's the most harmful. I think that I've probably done some pretty serious damage to the game, and I regret that. I don't know. I hope that's not true, honestly. I mean, I've created a lot of content that a lot of people have played and enjoyed playing, so that's all I can really hope for.
Yeah, I guess he's looking for specific instances of things where you're like, "Oh, that was a great thing I added to the game."
Oh, okay.
Or, "Oh, why did I do that? I just ruined the peanut butter with chocolate."
Well, none of us likes to believe we're the villain, so I'm going to look for something that. So we already talked about the Far Realm. So one thing that I did also in that same.
Yeah, we talk about it, but they don't know about that.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's go with 3rd edition though. That was 2nd edition. So in 3rd edition, I wrote 3 adventures within the first series of adventure, the Adventure League, the whatever it was called. There's a name for it. We had,
but it was no, it wasn't Encounters. That was 4th edition.
Yeah, it was Bastion of. So the first one was a Sunless Citadel, and that was the Gulthias tree, right? So that apparently showed up recently in Curse of Strahd. Then I wrote Heart of Nightfang Spire, which is the middle one of that adventure path. Adventure path was the word I was looking for. Which kind of more brought out what happened when the Gulthias tree was actually had originally been a spike someone had pounded into a vampire. And so the adventurers cut down the Gulthias tree in the end of Sunless Citadel because it was a horrific tree because it had been fused with this negative energy from the vampire. The vampire was essentially released, right? And so that vampire became the sort of the main culprit in the middle of Heart of Nightfang Spire. But anyway, the heart in Heart of Nightfang Spire was actually the heart of a dragon who had it ripped out of him, and so that dragon had been doing had taken basically a demon as its substitute heart so it could keep living, but it wasn't enough. And in Bastion of Broken Souls, we kind of explore that dragon. But one thing that happened is that I had brought in Demogorgon, and as we know, Demogorgon has 2 heads. So I came up with this idea that Demogorgon's 2 heads had 2 different personalities, 2 names, and they were fighting each other. And so there was this cult that was dedicated to one head and this other group that's dedicated to this other head. And the fact that Demogorgon's name head has 2 names has, I've seen, shown up in things since that time, since 3rd edition. So that is another thing that I'm happy to see. I personally really enjoy the idea that these heads are, the Demogorgon is slightly schizophrenic, and sometimes epic battles are fought between the forces between the 2 heads, to get their idea is correct, not the other idea.
No, that is actually that is fantastic, and I love that aspect of Demogorgon, and I did not know you were the one to introduce it, so that's really cool. And we were talking off air too that you actually introduced D&D to the Far Realm, which was a great addition.
Yeah, so when I first started working at TSR, and I said, well, why don't you write an adventure rather than write this multi-user online thing? I'm like, okay. And so they had the title already picked out. And Roger Moore, he was a previous Dragon editor. He was the one who had picked out the title, apparently. And they said, that's all we have. We have a title, Gates of Firestorm Peak, and you need to integrate whatever you write with the player's option books, which, if you're going to get really nerdy, there's these series in 2nd edition of these sort of like more technical, more rulesy bits to add into the game called player's options. So I was like, okay. And it has to work with regular D&D too. It's like, okay. So in order to deal with that, I just wrote a regular adventure and then had a little bullet point at the end of each one saying, if there's any player's options techniques that come into play, here's what that has to do with it. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. And anyway, I was like, well, Gates of Firestorm Peak. What about Gates into alternate dimensions? What about Gates into this freaky Lamarckian world of it's basically a D&D version of the Cthulhu-verse, or a Lovecraftian world of plane of horror outside of time. I brought in that I conceived of, like, Illithids were part of this whole thing, and they were mutated. Anyway, it all that stuff kind of came out of that first adventure. And after that, I wrote the Illithiad, which was the big tabletop book on Illithids. It all kind of rolled together, right? I always like to take a seed of something I'd written prior and kind of pull it forward and kind of explore that idea, and whatever the next project, whether it was a source book or an adventure.
Of that series, that was probably my favorite one.
The Illithiad?
Yeah.
And the 3 adventures that went with it?
Well, that was a source book on Illithids, right? They had all the different things in there. Yeah, they did one for Beholders, which was really well done as well. There was a couple of them, but the Illithid and the Beholder ones were the ones that really stuck out in my mind.
Yeah, the Illithiad I wrote. I think the Beholder one was written by Thomas Reed for the most part, or I think. And then we did one on the Sahuagin Sea Devils. And I think Skip Williams wrote that. although I wrote, so each one of those books also had 3 adventures that went with it. So I wrote the 3 adventures that went with the Olithiad, and I also wrote the 3 adventures that went with the Sahuagin, the Sea Devils one.
The funny thing is, when you're describing, the adventures that you wrote, I'm like, man, they sound so awesome. Our group is notorious for never touching pre-written adventures, pretty much. Like, literally, I buy a $50 book and go, awesome, I got to use something out of it, and it's like a paragraph. So, like, we buy a lot of them, but we just homebrew and steal most of our stuff from them.
That's, a lot of people do that, and that's totally great. I mean, I think adventures serve a need for certain for many people, and if you find, even if you're buying it and just taking a paragraph, then you got something out of it. So that's another reason, though, I'm glad that lore that develops an adventure is later extracted and put into a source book or something. That means that the seeds of that particular idea are retained within the greater canon of game. I mean, not to say that adventure isn't still out there too. So, yeah.
So just so you know, there's a wizard in Sweden that recently burned down the Goltheus tree a few sessions ago.
I hope I didn't give any spoilers out there. Nothing bad's going to happen. Don't worry. That was the right thing to do. You got to kill that tree.
With fire.
There's no vampire. Well, maybe killing with fire. Maybe the vampire that tree, the spike that tree grew out of will not be. Yeah.
Time will tell. So we are at the halfway mark already, and I am going to jump into the chat for roll call, guys. If you want to sound off, I know we skipped it yesterday, so you guys are probably eager to tell us where you're from today. Also, on a lot of your profile stuff, it says you're a fitness dilettante. So what are you into? While we're waiting for them to respond in the chat.
Well, it used to be. I mean, when I was really heavily into martial arts, I used to write that part of my thing used to say martial artist or something like that. And that is as 1, 2, 3 years went by, and I kind of lapsed to doing martial artists and just working out. I was like, I can't really say I'm a martial artist if I'm not practicing. So that's why I became fitness dilettante. I'm recently, about 4 or 5 months ago, I just got, well, actually even longer, I got the Jones for getting back into martial arts. I'd moved is the main reason I'm no longer doing it, because the studio I was going to was fantastic. It was a block from where I used to work at Wizards, and 10 minutes from my house, if that far. So it's so easy just to go there and train and be part of that community. But I've moved since then. It's like a 35-minute drive, and I just slowly fell out. Anyway, I've recently got back into martial arts because I found this great, after a little bit of experimentation, found this great new school called Han Mudo. It's, well, I don't know, the school teaches Han Mudo, which is only like a 22-year-old new art, which is a Korean martial art, but it utilizes so much of the jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai that I practiced for so long that I don't feel like I'm starting, even though I'm white belt now, which is interesting. I don't really feel like I'm starting at ground zero, which is really nice. So that's a long way of saying, it used to say martial art there. Now it says fitness dilettante because I just wanted to be, true. And I do still do a lot of workout. I do a lot of full body exercises online, Fitness Blender. You can probably see my elliptical in the background there and some weights. I'm really big believer in exercise as a way to keep myself happy, and keeping your body healthy also keeps you happy. I mean, your brain is the biggest organ in your body, and exercise helps it as much as it helps the rest of you. So mainly I exercise to feel good. I don't take antidepressants. I do drink. That's another thing I do to make myself feel good, but exercise does that really well. And as we get older, right, as we go into our 50s, sorry, I'm really going on now, but this is also one of my passions. So even just twice a week, lifting weights like above your head, like three different sets, can really just really slow down a lot of age-related degradation from bone loss, muscle loss, and it's lifting your arms over your head. It's just engaging the musculature and your bones and all that like that, which can do a lot of good. So I recommend that for everyone. anyone of any age, because it feels good. But as as you get into your 50s and 60s and 70s, it's a good thing to continue doing. All right, I'm gonna stop talking now because I'm keep having these ideas.
Right. No, absolutely. I enjoy people geeking out on the things they're into. I recently, my son, I used to be a personal trainer,
Oh wow,
a decade ago or something. But my son was like, "Oh, I want to start lifting," so I started going to the gym with him in the wintertime, and or not in the summertime, and my whole left side of my body is trashed now because what I found out is I'm actually still really, really strong, except for the joints did not keep up.
So you started lifting like you were used to.
I kind of took it slow, and I was like, "Oh, all right, well, that feels okay. I can handle the weight. I was able to move a decent amount of weight, and it felt okay. But after doing it for a couple months, it's like my elbow's killing me, my shoulder's killing me.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
I know. So now I have to work back into it. It's just like I was getting to the point where I was just starting to feel good about it.
I do have a refrigerator full of ice packs myself. The ice packs are, sometimes come home, it's like, oh my God, my elbow. I'll put on strap around an ice pack, and does the trick.
I have a little bit of a sickness too. Like I hate working out and exercise, to be honest with you. But what makes it more tolerable and enjoyable to me is moving a lot of weight and feeling strong.
Yeah. Okay.
So like, I might have overindulged myself in that.
Gotcha.
So what are you going to do? You live and you learn.
That's true.
So I want to jump in the chat here. We got Kyle coming to us from British Columbia. Doug's in Cleveland, Hunts Point, New York with Comic Book University. He's lying. He's in Canada by way of Asbury Park in Saudi Arabia. We got Lincoln in Sweden. We got Regilio in Utah. The OZ in the house represented by Raven. Ed Does Everything is in Dallas. We also have Todd in Dallas. Frigginator is in Washington State. Shallander is in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. We got Redozio, New Mexico, as well as Zarif Gaming. We've got Meat Moo, Cape Canaveral, Florida. Quebec in the house with Sylvain. We've got Espoo, Finland in the house with Epiphanes. We got Italy with Drejan. I don't know if I've seen Italy before. Welcome. We got Ohio with Audrey. We've got Salem, Massachusetts with Commodore, or Comrade, I should say. We've got Jacob in Monroe, Louisiana. And we talked for a while, so they popped out of roll call, but we're back in with Tucson, Arizona with CSU Command. Mexico is here with the Misanthrope. We also have Atlanta in the house with Jinker GM. We've got more Arizona with Scott Poe. We've got Greece in the house with Periculus. So we got people weighing in from all over the world, which is always really cool to see how international, not only is our channel, but the hobby as a whole makes you feel connected.
That is amazing. That is all over the world. Is there a place that I can look at this chat, or should I not look at the chat?
Yeah, you know what? I will get you a link. And guys, remember, if you have questions, put the word question in front of it. It makes it so much easier for us to pick them out. So in the chat in here, I just put a link to the actual chat.
Okay.
So that should do the trick.
Cool. Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Another back in with Colorado for Shaman and Brighton, Illinois for Patrick. So, like I said, it's the roll call is like one of my favorite parts of the day, is just seeing where people are coming from. And it's really weird to me when it's another country and there's like 4 or 5 people from Sweden hanging out. I'm like, are you guys all hanging out together or what? And you just know it's like weird times too.
Totally. All right, I waved into the chat room. Yeah, I was hitting the Q&A and I was hitting the chat in here, and I was like, well, I don't know where these people are. I don't see anybody. All right.
Yeah. So Zarif Gaming is a question. What is your favorite monster you've created? And that could be from any game that you've worked on. I'll expand that.
Sure. No, that's hard. I've written lots of. I actually just wrote a 200-page bestiary of creatures here. So I wrote all the creatures in this book. It's the 9th World Newman Era Bestiary 2. And so this creature right here, I'm making it easy for myself, is basically called a Sysgid instructor. Let's see, there's a little bit of glare on there. And basically, it's this entity. It's basically, you can see it has like kind of this formalized head and this basin with all these brains floating around inside of it in fluid. That was actually an artist conception that I wrote the monster to, so that also is also helpful when you're designing creatures if you have a great artist. This artist being Kieran Yanner. So anyway, what's that?
Did you create an evil lava lamp? Because that's what it looks like to me.
Well, what it actually is like if you want to learn some knowledge and you have this entity near you or you've located it, you can ask it a question. And you go up to that mouth on the top and you ask it a question and you put your ear to it to see if it'll whisper the answer back to you. And 9 times out of 10, it will whisper the answer from all its accumulated knowledge back to you, and you'll come away, with some benefit. But that 10th time or whatever the odds are, it'll come. Payment's due, and it needs the knowledge maybe you have, and basically it extracts your brain. And speaking of lithids, and then that your brain joins that little basin below where all that gray matter is floating in clumps. So I don't know if I have a favorite monster, but there's many that I enjoy a lot as I'm writing them, that's one. Because some people can have adventures. There's tension in this thing. It's not necessarily a fight. It could end up being a fight. It can defend itself, but it could just be an encounter where you're like, I don't know. This is a very dangerous encounter. We need this information, though. We need to figure out how to ascend into the space elevator or the beanstalk, right? And this creature knows the passphrase.
That's one hell of a game of Russian roulette.
Yeah.
I dig that. So CS, you command. What is the strange hanging in general? I'm not sure what that part means, but he wants to know what the strange is for someone who's never heard of it.
The strange is it's a game. It uses the same underlying rule set as Newman Era, which is the cipher system. But basically the setting is player characters kind of exist in our own world and learn that there's this underlying dark matter. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's actually dark matter energy network created billions of years ago by aliens. That doesn't really matter either. Basically, fictions. The Earth seeds these fictions into limited alternate worlds that exist around the Earth. And sometimes player characters have the ability to travel into these limited alternate worlds, explore them, and protect the Earth from those same alternate fictions that sometimes emerge to threaten the Earth itself, right? So anything that human imagination has focused on long enough may seed a limited alternate dimension within the strange, right? And often these limited alternate worlds kind of just exist and go along. Nothing in these worlds, these limited worlds, has any knowledge that they exist as anything other than themselves. But sometimes some of these entities will gain the spark of consciousness and realize they live in a limited world and try and escape, right? And that's when Earth could become imperiled, because sometimes these entities are powerful and might want to, claim a greater realm than just within their own limited dimension. And also the strange itself, this dark matter energy network, stretches across the entire universe and in fact responsible for the expansion of our universe, right? Dark energy is why our universe is expanding. And this is all the result of some horrific disaster that happened billions of years ago by this alien race that was trying to create this universal transport system. Upload yourself to the network and then download yourself, print yourself out someplace else in the universe. That all went to hell, and the strange is now what exists out there. And so there's these planetivores that basically lurk in the strange. And anytime a civilization, this is kind of more background now, often the game doesn't go in this direction, but anytime a civilization kind of pings the dark energy network with high energy particles of a high enough energy or quantum calculations that are basically deep enough, go far enough, that these planetivores kind of swarm up that connection and basically come out into the real universe of the real, the baryonic universe, baryonic matter. And that's the end of that civilization. And that's why the Fermi paradox exists and why we don't actually see any other civilizations out there in this wide universe because of this dark energy and the entities that live within it.
So in my mind, I just instantly go, I just generally break things down to their simplest form by habit. And I went, okay, aliens, public transit goes wrong is essentially in a nutshell what you just said, I think.
Yep. Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
So
Earth has a special connection with the strange, obviously, and that's why these limited alternate worlds have kind of bubbled up. And that's what most of the adventures in the strange have to do, right? You might be fighting the Red Queen, or Frankenstein, or Moriarty, or something out of your D&D campaign. So you have realms where mad science exists. The physics are such that mad science can exist, or magic, or exotic, or psionic, or standard physics, like the realms like the Earth itself and the real world. Standard physics obviously applies.
And the idea is you're traveling.
Characters kind of travel into these worlds and they take on the context of these places, right? So if you're familiar with the cipher system, you have three components to your character, which is your descriptor, which is like an adjective, your type, which is like a class, like a fighter, warrior, mage, whatever, although, you have different types of different classes. Then you have a focus, which is like bears of halo fire or fights with two weapons or something like that. So on Earth, you might be a stealthy vector, which is like a athletic type, who investigates mysteries, right? But if you travel into a limited alternate fantasy world, you might become a stealthy vector who kills dragons, or who shepherds souls, or who channels sorcery, right? And if you travel into a science fiction world, you might be a stealthy vector who builds robots or pilots starships, or fires plasma cannons. So the focus shifts. So one aspect of your character will shift depending on the limited world you find yourself in the strange. In regular games with the Cypher system, pretty much your focus remains consistent throughout your career, and you just go up in level.
So the idea too is it's not you're physically traveling these places; it's your consciousness that goes to them.
No, you're physically traveling.
Okay.
You're gone from the place you started, and you're in the new place.
Excellent. That's a far more in-depth explanation than I've heard before. So I'm sure that's very helpful for anyone listening for the first time that wants to know. Now, are there similarities conceptually between Invisible Sun and The Strange?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess you could say there's probably some conceptual ideas in the sense that there are alternate realms. In that sense, yes, but the foundational conception comes from two very different places, right? Like I wanted to answer Fermi's paradox, and that kind of led to it. And Monty wanted to create an entirely different occult world system, equally rich as the real world's occult system but entirely alternate, and very in depth and real on magic, right? It's all magic, right? All the character types in Invisible Sun are some version of a wizard, right? Whether you're a maker, you make items of great power and sorcery items, or you're a weaver, you just weave magic together on the fly. You're a wizard, or they're called Avants, actually. They're the most like D&D style wizards in that they can memorize particular magic.
Vance, fancy and magic, I guess so.
Yeah, totally. Could be an apostate, which is just like, screw all these orders of magic. I'm going to do my own thing, and I can still learn spells. I can just do whatever, right? So, but it's all based in a world of magic and an occult symbology and surrealism, right? The strange may end up being surreal, but it's not its main aesthetic. Whereas the Invisible Sun is surreal at its heart, right? It's finding the deeper truths and the secrets that underlie reality. The whole concept that secrets, there are always greater secrets to discover, and that our world right here is actually fake, and it's just a shadow, right, to cloud our eyes from the real world, which is the actuality. That's actually the opposite of the strange, right? In the strange, Earth is the real world, and these alternate limited worlds are fictions that come out of real fiction.
So it's more of a reverse parallel than anything.
I guess, yes, in that sense, but not a conscious, like, we're going to do the opposite of the strange, right? This is something that Monte has been thinking about for years, honestly. Even before I started working on the strange, he had said, my next game is going to be Invisible Sun. We kept having to put that off and put that off. So.
Yeah, so I have yet to delve into the MCG games, for their specific worlds yet and can settings, and that it's on my list. I just haven't gotten to it. Conceptually, I love the idea of Newman Era.
Right, Newman Era set 1 billion years in our future. 8 civilizations rose to the heights of unimaginable science. They created, probably Dyson spheres. They transcended, and then they fell or disappeared, right? And in the ruins of these 8 previous civilizations, humans are now back on the Earth 1 billion years later. 1 billion years, right? It's impossible to even almost conceive. And so the Earth has been transformed, like the cliff sides might just be the ruins of some ancient crashed starship. The dirt itself is not even dirt; it's drit, right? It's ground down technological artifices over the previous 1 billion years. It's basically a science fantasy sort of game, right? Because humans sort of exist in this medieval state. To them, it's all, for the most part, magic, right? It's like, I've created this talisman of gleaming crystal and stuff like this. Some of them actually think of it as technology. Depends on your character. But
yeah, I really enjoyed the Poison Eater novel by Shannon Germain.
Yeah, okay.
I keep wanting to say read, but as we discussed earlier, I don't really read so much anymore, but listen to. So
I actually consumed that book by listening to the audiobook as well. It was very well read, I thought.
Yeah, it was well done. So I definitely want to grab some more. How many novels do you guys have out now?
We have The Poison Eater out. We have The Myth of the Maker, which is the novel of the strange, out. And I think The Nightclave just came out, which is the second Newman Era book.
Okay.
And that's co-written by Shauna and Monte. And those are the 3 books that are out, but more books will be out in the future. I think the next book out is also a Newman Era book. I think the next book slated to be out will be called. Actually, I don't know if it's publicly named, so I better not try and even try and remember. So those are 3 books that are out right now. Go Myth of the Maker, The Strange, Poison Eater, recommended here highly. Also has an audible book. Myth of the Maker will soon have an audio book, and then The Nightclave, which I imagine will end up. All these books are coming out through Angry Robot Books. So if you're a fan of Angry Robot, you can trust that hopefully these books will meet these expectations and even exceed them. We certainly enjoyed writing them.
I will be circling Audible to see what comes out next.
I need to actually check myself, so I'm gonna make a note to check that as well, because it's like, if it's out, I need to let people know.
The last couple of things I've listened to have been Exile, which is Peter Klein's X Heroes, is really good.
I've listened to that.
Yes, it's a great series that I stumbled upon, and I guess one of the best reviews of his books that I've read is it's what Marvel Zombies should have been.
Yes, no, it's a great series. I agree. I would recommend it as well.
Another one I recently listened to was a really good one. Is actually from Dr. Wesley Snipes, and that is Talent of God, which is kind of like an urban fantasy.
What's it called? Talent of the God?
Talent of God, yeah.
Of God. I'll look for it. Something that I recently listened to that I really ended up enjoying. I almost stopped listening to it at the beginning because I was put off by something, but it's kind of a modern near future science fiction book that the author did a lot of research into AI and biotech and where things are going in the next 5 years, and created this really sprawling novel that he had read by multiple different people, many of which are fantastic voice authors, for the different parts, called Ever On. And it's by some guy Robert Reed, I think is his full name. And he's actually the guy who created Rhapsody to begin with way back when. So he has some chops in technology. And if you like technology and kind of hard science fiction-y sort of thing, I would recommend Ever On.
Ever On. Good. I'll have to make a note of that.
But you know what? It might be After On. Let me look. I think it's After On. Well, yeah, it's After On.
After On?
Yeah, After On. It's called A Novel of Silicon Valley, which I actually don't like that A Novel of Silicon Valley, because if I had known nothing about that novel, I would have probably not read it. I was like, oh, it's probably an autobiography of, like, you know, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, but it's not. It's not that at all.
I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. Because I just put it in, I just searched it on Audible, and I'm like, you gave me as an autofill. How can you not find it? But I was searching my library, not the store.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the recommendation.
Thank you for telling God.
No worries. Yeah, that was really good. And so apparently, I just recently learned that Wesley Snipes is actually a gamer.
Ah.
And he's going to be doing him and Sean Ashton will be writing for a Starfinder, third-party published product called Glimmer Space.
I did hear about that, actually. Yeah, Sean. Yeah, Sean Austin was just recently in Stranger Things 2, which I haven't quite finished the end of. Almost to the end of that season.
No spoilers. Yeah, I shotgunned that and recently the Punisher series, which was really good.
I'm almost done with the Punisher as well. I guess we sit on these really great series. We don't want them to end, so we only watch like one a week, as if it's like old style TV.
Yeah, so, clinging to it.
Yeah. Last night just finished Mindhunter on Netflix, which has like 9 episodes. It's very well done, but it's a little dark because it's kind of it's a lot dark, honestly, and it's exploring how the FBI first researched the idea that serial killers exist. So it's pretty crazy, honestly. It's probably not for everyone. It's one of those things I had to like get back into. I don't know about this, but ended up getting past the serial killers and just it's very interesting.
You know what the Punisher series kind of made me think of?
What's that?
It made me think of like how some people think of hit points in D&D.
Yeah.
As like, because if I have any complaint about it, is like he gets shot way too many times, but it's like I've seen people like they don't like the way healing works and how you get hit points back in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and they like you should only be able to heal by magic because it's unrealistic otherwise. And I'm like, wait a minute, how many times can you really be stabbed by a sword or shot full of arrows? And you're going to complain about unrealistic?
The way I always dealt with that in D&D, and honestly in any RPG where you use points to track your health, is that all those initial points are kind of like your robustness and your resiliency and stuff like that. So you're not actually, the very first time you get hit for 6 points with a sword, you're not actually getting stabbed, right? You're getting nicked, right? You're getting slapped in the head. You're getting, stuff like that, right? You're getting
it's
hurt.
A bruise. You blocked and effectively something, yeah.
Yeah, it's only the last few points that are like, okay, I've stabbed you in the gut and you're bleeding out, right? You're going conscious. So it's a full-on stab wound. So that's how I make it work in my head. If I'm in that mood to care about the legitimacy or the modeling to the real world.
We're of a similar vein. It's like you haven't had a real wound until you hit 0. And then at that point, you might, you've been impaled, you've been shot, something.
In the Cypher system, you have 3 pools, which is might, intellect, and speed. And we have a fairly easy recovery system to get back those points, because sometimes you can use those points to apply effort to a task. But these are also your life, right? And each time a pool goes to 0, you go down 1 step on what we call the damage track. It's impaired, debilitated, dead, right? And impaired. So if you lose all the points in one of your pools, usually it's your might first. It costs you a little bit more to do things. You still up. If you go down 2 pools, you're basically like crawling around going, I'm not good, right? And obviously if you lose all your points in all your pools, you're dead. So there's some conditions in that sense, just 2 kind of built-in conditions to to simulate to some extent that getting more hurt, but I'm not dead. I'm even more hurt, not dead. Oh, now I'm dead.
I also really want to play a supers game in the Cypher system. I like how you do the 5 bonus ranks.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Play
with that.
I did write an adventure for our asset team. I don't know if it's available yet, but it is a superhero adventure. It comes with 5 or 6 pre-generated Cypher system superheroes. Darcy Ross is probably the person to ask about that to see what the availability of that adventure is.
I'm anticipating and waiting for the Unmasked as well.
Right.
You're going to taunt me, aren't you?
I just got my copy. Where did I put it? That is bizarre.
I have to go figure out if I didn't do something right on the backer kit, because I'm pretty sure I should have that one coming.
I think a child has come and taken my yesterday delivered copy of Unmasked, so I will not taunt you.
That happens. They're good for that kind of stuff.
Yes, they totally are. It's like, where's my copy of my core book? Go upstairs. All right. I'm glad to see people enjoying RPGs.
What ages?
18.
Okay.
The boy who's the most interested in the RPGs.
Yeah, well, my son is, well, in a couple, what's the 28th? In a couple of days will be 17, and he's been playing with us for the past few years.
Cool.
We went to, actually, at Gen Con, we demoed Perdition, and he didn't care what character he had. He just wanted to be the one that had the Ankylosaurus before he knew there was a character that had an Ankylosaurus. And it was the best, because it was the best switch and bait ever, because they're like, they hand out the characters and he gets the character he wants and the pet he wants, and then they're like, all right, now hand your pet to the guy on the left.
He's like, no.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's a cool system. For you guys that don't know, World of Cypher came out with a bunch of different settings for the Cypher system, and Perdition is one where it kind of mismatches time travel, lasers, and dinosaurs, I guess. It's basically Dino Riders is how I would sum it up from like the cartoon when I was a kid. But but you get a dinosaur pet, and the fun thing is that someone else actually ends up controlling it, and you actually have to make checks and rolls to actually get the dinosaur to do whatever you want to do. So you kind of have to like socially interact with it, which is an interesting mechanic to the game.
Yeah, it's a great setting. Really imaginative, and I love the science fictional aspects as well. The ciphers, the Cypher system, obviously the ciphers your character has, of which is these one-use weird powers. Depends. They vary based on the setting, and in Predation, they're basically these kind of DNA encoded special quirks, abilities you get by falling into or purposely walking through a time anomaly. Which is
you were one of those as well, right? You did Gods.
I did Gods of the Fall, which is a high fantasy setting for the Cypher system, except the premise is that 40 some years ago, heaven, the realm of the gods, actually materialized and smashed down onto the face of the world, creating apocalypse, essentially destroyed this entire one nation. And 40 years later, your players are kind of waking to the fact that they may have sparks of divinity themselves, and so they have to start building themselves up as gods by following these prophecies. There's 7 prophecies which they can choose to follow, and creating, doing these certain labors and certain things as they increase their level and tier, and maybe one day they can basically fix this world, which has fallen into such despair and hopelessness, by becoming the new gods, or at least forces for good in this world. Sweet. I would show you the cover, but like I said, someone has made off with my 3 books in the Worlds of the Cypher System slipcase.
Absconded with everything. Yeah, it was a really hard choice when I backed, because I didn't back for the level that gave you all of them, but it was a tough choice because they were all really cool concepts and ideas. It's like, why there's has to be so many good choices. Can you guys at least bomb 1 or 2 of them, make it easy for me?
Well, you know, we really put a lot of effort into each one, but yeah, it's 3 different settings, and of course, all the cipher system settings are perfect recursions for the strange too. So if you're playing the strange, it's like, oh, I've got another really in-depth limited world for a recursion in the strange.
You can
If you
just
want to
drop
travel between these dimensions.
Nice. We are at the hour mark. So what do you want to leave people with before we split out of here?
I just want to say thanks everyone who's taking the time to watch us talk about RPGs. I share your passion with these RPGs, obviously, and I look forward to continuing to working in this industry as for many years to come. And I hope if you guys haven't already, you know, check out some of the stuff by MCG. Cypher System is a basic game system that you can get just if you want to create your own games, or if you want to have pre-made settings, you can try out Newman Era, science fantasy, The Strange, which is also science fantasy, just in a different setting. Those are the 2 things that are on offer right now. Invisible Sun is on the horizon.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us today. And be on the lookout too, because once Invisible Sun does drop, we are giving away 2 copies because we want to share, you know, MCG with everybody. And it's a pretty hefty giveaway too. So
it is. That is a pricey giveaway. You'll have to make sure you let us know that you're doing that in case we miss it, so we can help spread the spread your tweets about that giveaway, because that's very cool.
we will absolutely do that. So until next time, guys, stay nerdy.
Thanks, guys.